How's it going, everybody? So, Friday, August 6th, right? 2021. Some of you, probably none of you, but some of you weren't adults on 9/11, 2001. And a lot of you who weren't adults ended up going over and serving in the wars that 9/11, 2001 brought about. Now, 20 years later, after those wars have gone the way of Vietnam, I think it would be a good time to reflect on a few things. First of all, was the blood and treasure worth it? Second of all, was your freedoms worth it? Right? I think this is a good conversation starter. And I'm going to ask anybody who sees this video to respond to this video with a response video on your thoughts. And you can just put it down below now. You can just put the whole link to the video down in the comment section below. Right? Anybody who plays the YouTube game knows the YouTube game. I haven't been monetized in years, so cussing on here doesn't matter. But I noticed that they started shutting down some channels that aren't putting in child warnings if you start cussing or, doing whatever. I don't even know. I know one day I'm going to get cut from this, just like I got cut from Facebook, just like I got cut from Twitter, just like I got cut from whatever, wherever you used to speak your mind. Okay, and don't think if you if you brought a soapbox to your town square and started telling the truth, that they wouldn't shut that down too. You'd have to get a permit, you'd have to ask permission, blah blah, yada yada yada. So here we are, 20 years later, and those of you who were adults then, I was 35. Right? So I was full bore, adult, fucking kids. Just had a new one that year. Right? My daughter turned 20 June 6th this year, and she was born on June 6th, 2001. Right? At the time, I owned a business. I was a bar owner, a legit bar owner, not a Green Dragon Tavern, but it was pretty much run very similarly, right? So there were legal and illegal things going on in my bar. Some of the illegal things I was doing, right? So I don't own the bar no more. Bankruptcy sucks. Pay your taxes, I guess, if you're going to be living in the quote-unquote law-abiding citizen world. Pay your taxes, right? If you're not going to live in the quote-unquote law-abiding citizen world, then, you understand the repercussions, which I do, always have, always will, right? And I accept the repercussions for my actions. My actions. My actions. You understand? So whatever I do, it's my fault. But I'd like to know, those of you who've been around, those of you who served in those wars, those of you who've watched the degeneration of our nation, I'd like to hear your responses. Now, in some ways, I'll tell you what, at least here where I live, where I moved back to not too long after 9/11, all right, I stayed another couple of years, and my bar was a lot of cops, a lot of firemen. They never drank. They never paid for a drink while they were there. That was part of my policy. My brother-in-law, he was firefighter that day down there, and spent the next year trying to clean that shit up, find bodies. A guy I went to school with. Grade school, junior high, high school. He was a firefighter, Dennis Mulligan. God rest his soul. I'm keeping your memory alive, brother. He was a firefighter. Went up in those fucking towers, never came down but in ashes. I grew up watching those fucking towers being built. My dad did the roofs on them, and I, as a young scruff, was a messenger, bonded, down in Wall Street, and I used to have to run up and down the Trade Center every day for about a year in my part of my misspent youth. And being a bonded messenger, which was great, I was also then a bonded dealer, right? Because Wall Street's always been a run with drugs. It will always be a run with drugs. It just is what it is. Anyway. So here, 20 years on. While a lot of American life hasn't changed, especially out the more rural you get, society has changed. Society has changed a lot. I'd like to know what you guys think about the societal changes we've been dealing with over the past 20 years. And in the societal changes, do you think you gained anything in your freedom? I'll tell you this, surprisingly though, there is one thing we have gained in that 20 years. And that was allowing the assault weapons bill to sunset, and thereby bringing so many people into the fold of understanding that your protection is dependent upon you. And one of the greatest tools to protect yourself are arms, whatever those arms be. And in the Second Amendment, you do have, it gives you, it recognizes, it doesn't give you shit. It recognizes the fact that you as a human being have the right to self-protection and to use arms to do so, whatever those arms may be, right? Because it doesn't fucking specifically say you have the right to keep and bear guns, because there's more than just guns as arms. One of the reasons why I'm not a big NFA fan, ever. Anyway, so that's the one thing I can add to and say that we are in a better spot than we were 20 years ago. America's better armed, the citizenry. That keeps the government more afraid of us, which is why they constantly fight against Americans being armed. And we may be on the beginnings of an upswing going the other way, which can be just as dangerous. But as of right now, 2021, August 6th, how free do you think we are? How do those vets feel about serving in those wars? And on a last note, last thing I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask you this looking at you, what do you think's coming next? What do you think they're going to do or allow to happen next to be able to gain more control? We talk about 9/11, right? 3,000 and change died on 9/11. The fact that you're watched and surveilled and tracked, and all your thoughts and all the societal changes and all shit that we're talking about over the past 20 years that have happened. Those 3,000 lives, well, I guess 3,000 is the number of our freedom. Even though some of them are my friends. I don't think it's right. But what do you think? Do a video response. I will watch and comment on your video if you decide to make it. If you decide to accept this little challenge. What do you think?